I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Pandemic Perspectives on Trade, a conversation with Uzbek Ambassador to the United States, His Excellency Javlon Vakhabov. My name is Andrew Gelfuso, and I'm the Director of the World Trade Center, Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for joining us today. The World Trade Center, Washington, D.C. is the programming arm of the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center. Normally, we would be here in person. We host policy forums, we host trade missions, business briefings, and trade shows. When COVID hit us in mid-March, we embarked on a Message of Hope campaign, where we facilitated messages from nearly 50 ambassadors to the people of the United States with uplifting messages. Ambassador Vakhabov contributed a message, and I'd encourage you to view his message and others on our website at rrbitc.com. We've also been pleased to feature the ambassador in our newsletter called Trade Winds, and in the past, we've hosted Uzbekistan's National Day, which was spectacular. The World Trade Center, Washington, D.C. is part of the nonpartisan, apolitical World Trade Center Association, which has 300 licenses in over 90 countries around the world. Today, we're very pleased to once again partner with the Washington Intergovernmental Professional Group, or WIPG. For the past 3 years, we've worked together to bring in members of Congress and diplomats to the Reagan Building and International Trade Center for intimate and candid conversations on economics, tourism, trade, and much more. And now it's my pleasure to turn the program over to my good friend, Nelson Garcia, the founder and president of WIPG. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Andrew, and welcome everybody to today's edition of our webinar featuring ambassadors from around the world. And we could not be more happy to have His Excellency Javlon Vakhabov participating in today's edition. We have been working very closely with the embassy even before his arrival, which is a testament to his hardworking staff at the embassy to maintain an outreach program that allows us to work with our embassy in a very close manner. We'd like to obviously welcome and thank our partners, Andrew Gelfuso and Allison McKiffin and Hosai from the World Trade Center of Washington, D.C. This partnership has been going on since at least 2009, and we hope to eventually go back again to our normal process of having luncheons and receptions at the Ronald Reagan Building and International Trade Center. But for now, until we find a cure for the pandemic crisis, we obviously look forward to hosting these various webinars with our illustrious hosts and guests from around the world. Before I introduce the ambassador, I would like to mention a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, we encourage all participants to ask questions, and you can find a function key, it should be at the bottom of your screen under Q&A. And if you have a question for the ambassador, please feel free to write it out, and we will relay that to the ambassador throughout the program. Any unanswered questions that we are unable to get to due to time constraints, we will forward to the embassy, and we hope to have the embassy follow up with you in the near future. At the same time, this webinar will be presented to all of our participants in a video form for their personal use. And the Washington, D.C. YouTube channel will have this up and running, hopefully within about a week. But at the same time, each of you will receive a version via email moving forward. So thank you again, all of you, for participating in today's program. So to introduce the ambassador, again, it has been my pleasure going back since his arrival here in 2017 to work with him and feature him in today's webinar on the pandemic, his perspective on the pandemic crisis as it relates to U.S.-Uzbeki relations. His Excellency was born in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. He was educated, received his Bachelor of Arts in International Law in 2001 at the University of World Economy and Diplomacy at Tashkent, Uzbekistan. He also received his Master of Arts in International Law at the same university in 2003. Throughout his career, he served in various capacities at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as the National Security Council in Uzbekistan, before arriving here as the ambassador of Uzbekistan to the United States of America in 2017. His Excellency currently speaks English and Russian, as well as is married with 3 wonderful children. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce His Excellency Javlon Vakhabov, the Ambassador of the Republic of Uzbekistan to the United States of America. Your Excellency.
Dear Andrew, dear Nelson, ladies and gentlemen. So as always, it's my absolute delight and great pleasure to share with Uzbekistan's successful economic performance during the COVID-19 pandemic. So unexpected, strong windstorm that crashed all our plans across the world and made us obey its own rules of games. So to start with, I would like to shortly stop at the pandemic situation in my country. So we are all witnessing how pandemic has hit all of us unprepared and still causing serious harm to our national economies. And at present, about 60,000 people in Uzbekistan are infected with COVID-19, and almost 500 died, unfortunately. And we had the first apex in April, when we had less than 500 active cases. And unfortunately, we reopened economy, so easing quarantine measures, bringing back over hundreds of thousands of our citizens from abroad, and even dividing the entire country and our regions into red, yellow, and green zones did not work as we have anticipated. And as a result, so cases skyrocketed, both among locals, about 48%, and newly arrived, more than 52%. And as you can see from the graph, so the second apex of active cases lay at the end of the July with about 10,000 cases, which is almost 20 times more than during the first outbreak in Uzbekistan. So, and as a result, we had to impose the second lockdown in Uzbekistan, and it was effective between July 10th and August, late August, just to curb a new surge in cases of the novel coronavirus. And that was the first set of very strict restrictions after easing quarantine measures since late May. And under these new restrictions, the movement of vehicles so was limited. Travel between regions was to be forbidden for all but essential purposes, and mass gatherings are mostly banned. So with respect to weddings, so I would like to mention, so even these kind of events were not permitted during the second lockdown at all, while funerals so might be attended by a maximum of 15 people. And so the public was being encouraged to refrain from going to work and to use video conferencing software wherever it's possible. So another slide that I would like to slightly switch to is about how we started reopening the economy. And after lessons learned from two waves of the spread, and based on the best international expertise, so we decided to start reopening our economy for the second time. And of course, it was a hard decision, as nobody knows the real outcomes of reopening. However, we have to think about the economic situation in the country and the well-being of the ordinary people. So therefore, starting from August, we began the process of lifting country-wide lockdowns. And now most of those restrictions that I have mentioned above are gone. And still we, every part of our life, so without exaggeration, affected by COVID rules like wearing masks, social distancing, sanitizing, and etc. And implementing measures like mandatory pre-departure COVID-19 testing. Actually, I'm talking about 72 hours prior to the departure. So we resumed international flights. And moreover, we have started in-person teaching since September. By the way, here I would like to point out that, again, according to those new rules amid COVID-19 that the current government has imposed, so the parents are actually free to choose both online or and offline education. So, and based on their preferences, the schools are actually are open to the public, open to the kids. And tourism is another sector that we are paying very key attention. And here I would like to notice that tourism, well-known tourism destinations are now open to the public. So economic sector is almost fully resumed. And in order to support our local healthcare workers, so experts from China, Korea, Germany, Russia, Turkey, and other countries have arrived to support Uzbekistan in its fight against COVID-19. So please, next slide about the GDP increase. Yes. So the latest updates that I would like to share with you are the following. So according to the World Bank report released just yesterday in the evening, so the COVID-19 pandemic has sunk the global economy into the deepest recession in 8 decades. And in the emerging and developing countries of Europe and Central Asia, so GDP is expected to contract 4.4% in 2020. So with respect to my country, I would like to emphasize that Uzbekistan's GDP is expected to increase by 0.6%, followed by 4.8% increase in 2021. And here, just would like to stress on the fact that Uzbekistan is the two countries and the biggest economy among 23 countries showing positive dynamics. Again, according to the World Bank statistics that I'm referring to. So another slide, please, telling about Uzbekistan trade turnover. So one of the interesting phenomena that we have observed during the pandemic is the behavior of our exports and imports. As you can see from this chart, so the volume of exports in 2020 are almost catching the levels of 2019 with a minor change. And the same, so it cannot be indicated on import side, where 3 billion difference in the numbers of 2019 and 2020. So this graph is a clear illustration of the success of government measures to support domestic economy and exporters. And according to our forecast, we will even have an increase of total exports by the end of this year. With respect to previous one. So with regard to US-Uzbekistan trade relationship. So as you can see, so on the slide, so we look please at the dynamics of trade between the US and Uzbekistan. And of course, as many other countries were hit by the pandemic, so this disease affected to US-Uzbekistan bilaterals negatively. So you can see that American companies started the year with some positive trend in January and February, while the dynamic turned completely opposite since then, with a minor exception of May. And according to the data I have, so we bought US goods worth almost $500,000 last year, in particular during January, August. And this number decreased 3 times to $160 million in 2020, and showing how badly it affected the US enterprises. Despite the pandemic difficulties, we, by the way, stayed committed to our earlier commitments. And even we didn't cancel previously concluded contracts. In particular, one of those 6 Boeing 787 Dreamliners hopefully will be delivered very soon. So 5 of those have been already shipped to Uzbekistan. So again, despite these current difficulties that the entire government of Uzbekistan is getting through, so we remain very much committed to our obligations. So next slide is mostly about how we are actually promoting the Uzbekistan export to the United States. So, and on contrary, the trend doesn't severely change with regard to the exports from Uzbekistan to the US. And over the same period of January to August, so the difference is only, yes, $1 million between 2019 and 2020. So due to new export contracts signed recently, so we expect that in 2020 we might even have around 10% increase in our exports to the United States. And just recently, USDA approved new 10 egg import items, products such as beans, mung bean, chickpea, peanuts, almonds, walnuts, and dried raisins, dried apricots, prunes, and dried figs. So, and hopefully, again, good news is that so loved by all of you famous Uzbek to be imported to the United States by the beginning of 2021. So that is my desire, and hopefully we'll be able to achieve this objective as well. So next slide is mostly about questions that might arise. So the reasonable question arises, why do we have better trends than global indicators, and how could Uzbekistan achieve those positive dynamics? So from the first days of the pandemic, we had a clear understanding of its catastrophic effects on the national economy. So therefore, in order to prevent the collapse, as well as to sustain Uzbekistan's reform agenda, we adopted a number of measures on both internal economics and external trade. And the priority areas are identified as ensuring economic and financial stability, so poverty reduction and employment growth, acceleration of reforms in the banking system, increase in foreign direct investments, boosting the export potential and securing foreign exchange earnings. So strengthening competitiveness in industry, development of small businesses, widespread adoption of digital technology across all walks of life. Just one example I would like to share with you that again demonstrates how this government, the government of Uzbekistan and all the involved ministers and agencies have been very much committed to assisting both domestic and foreign SMEs operating in Uzbekistan, delivering so the goods to actually all the destinations across the globe. Also international passenger flights have been cancelled during the lockdown. But with respect to cargo flights, so they have been operating, again, shipping the goods to South Korea, to Japan, to several destinations in Russia, even China. Actually, that was a way how the government of Uzbekistan has been very much supportive to local entrepreneurs. And another slide, next slide, yes, shows the key outcomes that we've been able to gain during the pandemic. So, and in this slide, I would like to focus on some of them, on some of measures implemented and proactive economic policy results. So we managed to preserve the sources of income and the standard of living for the majority of the population. Only 100 out of 72,500 industrial enterprises suspended their activities since the beginning of pandemic, and 16,500 enterprises who paused their operations eventually resumed. Moreover, so projects worth $11 billion are being implemented. So in the industrial sector alone. So beside that, projects worth $1.2 billion are being implemented in particular in the agriculture of Uzbekistan. So beside that, we have allocated about $400 million funds to support so-called Every Family Entrepreneur program that was approved by the government during the pandemic. So again, with respect to exact figures, numbers, so social benefits have been provided to almost 1.5 million people. And around, so again, back to the projects that have been implemented in Uzbekistan. So I would like to mention that around 8,000 projects have been funded under the so-called Youth is Our Future program, also adopted by the government. And all these have made their positive impact on our national economy, so without any doubt. So, and And this is not end at all. So another slide where you can see the members of the current administration, so led by the president. So and the dynamic is only upwards, as you can see. So there are regular virtual meetings and regional visits at the head of state level. So the main aim is to ensure the stable economy. And you can see at this slide some of the moments how we actually organize these talks, these meetings. So they are dedicated to various topics, from agriculture to digital economy, that make all of us in the government stay tuned and in shape. Even all those 50 Uzbekistan ambassadors serving across the globe. So another slide is about our international agenda. So as you can see, so currently, so since we've eased quarantine restrictions in Uzbekistan, so every single foreigner is free to enter Uzbekistan without any restrictions. So with respect to foreign delegations, so they are very, very much welcomed without, again, no limitations. So, and we, since the time we are hosting a number of high-level delegations from our partnering countries. And here I would like to stop on several connected with the US officials. As you might be aware, so the first visit of DFC CEO Adam Boiler went very productive and promising. So the itinerary was full of meetings with high-level local officials that resulted in tangible outcomes. Here at the photo, you can see him being hosted by Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Investments and Foreign Trade of the Republic of Uzbekistan, Sardar Umarzakov. So Foreign Minister Abdulaziz Kamilov, a gentleman whom you, Andrew and Nelson, know well, gentleman who participated in the celebrations of our National Day last year, so at the Ronald Reagan Building, and of course, chairwoman of the Uzbekistan Senate, Madam Narbayeva. So during the talks with the Deputy Prime Minister, so Adam Boiler noted the high interest in the corporation's direct participation in the process of socio-economic reforms in the country through co-financing of priority projects and initiatives aimed at developing the private sector and infrastructure. So for an early transition to practical cooperation, so the Uzbekistani government suggested to consider a package of 27 specific investment projects in agriculture, light industry, pharmaceuticals, and building materials production. So DFC also expressed its readiness to consider opportunities for participation in public-private partnership projects in solar and wind energy, as well as the transport sector. So moreover, parties also discussed the existing potential for involving DFC in financing private investors involved in privatization of large state-owned enterprises and commercial banks, most of them, of course, state-owned in Uzbekistan. So, and the possibility of creating financial resources with equity participation of the DFC and the Uzbekistani government with the prospect of attracting the governments of other countries of Central Asia and Afghanistan, of course, was also one of the acute issues. So Adam Boiler and DPM Umarzakov so have discussed. So we have also expressed our interest to become a part of so-called Blue Dot Network. I guess you've heard about this initiative. Upon establishing a set of membership criteria, terms of certification and of course organizational structure of the network. So indeed, just wanted to reiterate that so that we do have a high interest to be a part of this initiative. And following the negotiations, so we agreed to create a joint working group in order to follow up to reach deliverables. And among those arrangements that have been achieved during his visit, just would like to mention that we've started talking about the Regional Investment Fund. And currently we are still working on that, on the conditions, on the key objectives, and of course how those financial resources could be utilized by all Central Asian countries. So at this moment, the discussions are underway. So another meeting, as you may see on the photo, held at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Together with the Foreign Minister of Uzbekistan, Adam Boyler, who was also joined by the U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan Constellation, Zalmay Khalilzad, focused mostly more on regional cooperation, including close involvement of Afghanistan into regional processes. And it was noted that the first meeting of trilateral format of interaction, Uzbekistan, US, and Afghanistan, held on late May, confirmed the importance of this mechanism for developing practical proposals for the restoration of the Afghan economy and its active involvement in Central Asia economic and political life. So, and here just I would like to point out that DFC is very much interested in a number of projects contributing to expansion of economic and transport communication relations between Afghanistan and the region's countries. And another meeting that I would like to emphasize was held at the Uzbekistani Senate. So, and the dimension, in particular, women empowerment, was a central topic at the meeting with the first women chairperson of the Uzbek Senate, Madam Tanzila Narbayeva, who actually is in role of vice president, as Mike Pence here in the US. So, and Adam Boyler confirmed its readiness to support parliamentarism in order to further increase the role of the parliament in solving problems in socio-economic and the socio-political life of Uzbekistan. So to assist in organizing internships of members and employees of the Congress, of the US Congress, just to study the American experience, so the best expertise, exchange views in the use of innovative technologies by women who actually plan to start their own businesses in Uzbekistan. So development of female entrepreneurship in rural areas, as well as in implementation of measures to combat violence against women and prevent trafficking in persons. So as most of you must be familiar, there is a parliamentary group for cooperation between Uzbekistan and the United States, and I'm talking about the Caucus on Uzbekistan that we have been able to establish in 2018, that also greatly supports the current changes and reforms taking place in the civil society of Uzbekistan. So, just to enclose my remarks on this matter, to sum up the visit of Adam Boiler to Uzbekistan, I have counted following at least 7 deliverable results. So first, financial and technical assistance to so-called project factory that the government of Uzbekistan has established during the pandemic, aimed at the development of high-quality feasibility studies of large projects for foreign investors. Second, so participation of DFC in projects to develop infrastructure and create new jobs in Afghanistan, including trans-Afghan railways and power lines. So the Uzbekistani government is involved. Third, so the preparation of comprehensive programs aimed at involving the Afghan population in legal entrepreneurial activities that would be beneficial for growing opium pastime. Fourth, as I have mentioned above, co-financing of solar and wind power plants in Uzbekistan. Fifth, so the development of large projects based on PPP in the field of transportation. Sixth was about financing investment projects in agriculture, pharmaceuticals, light industry, so with a total value of over $500 million, including those providing for the construction of affordable housing in Uzbekistan, so the creation of fishery and many others. So, and the last one, so support the privatization of state assets, including commercial, state-owned commercial banks, so, and even another well-known US company that has been expanding its presence in Uzbekistan since early 90s, Coca-Cola. So even this business, this enterprise is supposed to be privatized. So, and here just in a few words, I wanted to mention that Adam Boiler visit was actually the second high-level visit of the US government to Uzbekistan. So the first, as you may know, was in the beginning of the year when Secretary Pompeo attended C5+1 ministerial meeting in Tashkent. And recently we held another second ministerial, so via online video conferencing, which was hosted again by the secretary. So, so if we do have enough time, I can of course later stress on the key outcomes, but here just would like to jump into another slide telling about the recent international event. I'm talking about the UNGA session, which was held for the first time in virtual format. So, and my country, as many others, was represented by the head of state, by President Shavkat Mirziyoyev, and who came up with a few key initiatives that I would like you know about that. So we proposed to develop under the United Nations auspices an international code of voluntary commitments of states during the pandemics. Another initiative was about the support the 2021 UN Food Systems Summit. Beside that, so the leader of Uzbekistan has put forward the initiative on developing a draft of UN Convention on the Rights of Youth. Again, given the fact that more than 60% of our population, as you know well, are the youth under the age of 30. So we proposed to adopt a special resolution of the United Nations General Assembly on enhancing the role of parliaments in achieving the sustainable development goals and ensuring human rights. So by the way, here I would like to mention that that Uzbekistan has put forth its nominee to the United Nations Council for Human Rights. So the elections are supposed to be held next week, if my mind doesn't change me, on October 13th. And so we are looking pretty good among others. Hopefully we'll be able to succeed and be a member, full-fledged member of the UN Council for Human Rights. So we've also suggested to establish a permanent UN Commission on Afghanistan that would address the concerns of long-suffering Afghan people. What else? And one more point, it's mostly about tourism. So we came up with a proposal, with the initiative to hold an international forum, Central Asia at the crossroads of world civilizations, in the ancient city of Khiva, one of those 4 UNESCO World Heritage listed cities in Uzbekistan, hopefully next year in 2021, in cooperation, in close cooperation with UNESCO. So, dear participants of today's webinar, and I'm far from showing all the positive dimensions. Of course, the results we are achieving are remarkable and should appealing to many foreign companies. And we are open to partnership. But meanwhile, we do admit that there are challenges we have to solve on our way of to prosperity. And there are several areas that traditionally hindered foreign investments in Uzbekistan, and we're definitely working on their improvement. But let me outline the main ones. So again, among those remaining challenges that I would like again to draw your attention. So high presence of the government in the economy. So the task that we are still working on. Public procurement, again, sitting here in Washington, so I still hear so many complaints, and at the same time we are still developing the system of public procurements available to both domestic and of course foreign enterprises. Intellectual property rights. You know, last year in 2019, so the Uzbekistani government has joined 3 WIPO internet treaties, but at the same time, so right now, so another issue that we are currently focusing on is to implement those international treaties to the Uzbekistani conditions by introducing amendments to the current laws and regulations. So we need to improve, of course, capacity building and other challenging issues that the current government is tackling so with respect, and of course, one of the key I would say headache that the current government is deeply involved is about unemployment. So you know the official number of unemployment is about 1.3, actually 1.5 million people, or 9% of the total labor resource pool. So, and the level of youth unemployment is about 15%, and the level of female unemployment is almost 13%. But here, another point that I would like to stress on is mostly related to those almost 3 million Uzbekistanis who are currently residing and working mostly as a labor migrants in Russia, in neighboring Kazakhstan. So another problem that I mean, the current administration is working so hard, again, of course, to bring all of them back home. And of course, when this government, so we will be able to absorb of them, creating so jobs for all of them. And all these items, all these tasks are under serious consideration and absorbing enormous efforts by the government. We are still on our long journey of transformations to prosperity and better well-being of our people. So here I will just conclude my presentation and stand ready to take your questions. Again, thank you for your patience and thank you so much for your attention and being with us.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Appreciate very much your comprehensive presentation in today's webinar about your country's bilateral relationship, trade relationship with the United States. And so thank you again for that very thoughtful and comprehensive presentation. We have time for a couple of questions, and I'll start off, Your Excellency, when recently you took part in an announcement with Acting Secretary John Barsa of the U.S. Agency for International Development that talked about the establishment of a mission in Uzbekistan as well as Tajikistan. So the question I have is, what do you expect to come out of establishment of such a mission in your country? What are the goals that you would like to see accomplished with the establishment of this mission in Uzbekistan?
Nelson, thank you so much for this question. Indeed, it's a big topic, you know well. And taking these opportunities, would like to extend my gratitude to the United States Agency for International Development for its decision to expand its presence in my country. And we are confident that it will enhance and reinforce its mission in many priority areas that I have mentioned in my remarks that day. And as was determined by the President of Uzbekistan at the United Nations General Assembly session, so one of our key priorities is to reduce poverty through development of entrepreneurship, so job creation, improving the investment climate and business environment, so building a modern infrastructure and providing comprehensive human capacity building. So in this regard, it's extremely important to reinforce USAID's so-called competitiveness, trade and jobs projects, or new projects like the Future Growth Initiative and E4, enterprise, employment, and enabling environment, also meet the needs and priorities of Uzbekistan to create employment opportunities for almost 2 million people, as I had mentioned above, which accounts for 13% of unemployment rate. So with respect to trade investment between Uzbekistan and the United States, including through programs aimed at improving the business regulatory environment and investment climate. So USAID's involvement, USAID's engagement is highly welcomed in Uzbekistan. So, and we also appreciate USAID's support of our education reform aimed at creating the systems that can produce graduates with the critical thinking, so problem solving and practical skills that will enable them to succeed. And you know, last year, so the US government has allocated almost $15 million to these needs, and we are currently working on implementing this project in Uzbekistan, mostly focusing on public education. So another priority area where USAID's support would be extremely helpful is youth empowerment. Beside that, USAID's assistance has been instrumental to ensuring food security in the country, and we rely on its support. So for successful implementation of Uzbekistan agriculture development strategies that is meant for 2020-2030, aimed at creating a favorable agribusiness climate and value chain. So these are the top, oh, by the way, one more point that I would like to stress on is related to our judiciary. So we can't stress enough the importance of USAID's work to support legal reforms in Uzbekistan, including, so by successful introducing electronic digital court system. And we are standing ready to continue our partnership in ensuring independence of the judiciary and, of course, ensuring the rule of law in the country. So these are the key priorities that we would like to start working with the new mission of USAID in Uzbekistan.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Andrew, I'll hand off to you.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for your informed remarks. One question I had are, what are the top trading industries, the top sectors where most of the jobs are tied to between our two countries? And also in the era of COVID, how does a US business find a partner in Uzbekistan?
Andrew, mainly we import transportation means. As I had mentioned, like Boeing airplanes, or seeding and harvesting machines manufactured by John Deere and C&H Industrial, so another US-based company. Another area is mostly related to advanced technologies. So on this matter, so we are closely working with such cutting-edge US companies, Honeywell, mostly in the oil and gas sector. So here, just I would like also to point out how the General Electric is so active in the Uzbekistan market, again delivering those highly demanded turbines meant for local thermal power stations in Uzbekistan. Of course, third area is about services. So consultancy, so banking, and etc. So these are the key top three key areas where the U.S. businesses might be very successful. They are successful over the last 25 years, mostly focusing on these areas. But at this point, so I would like also to mention that our desire, our task also to equalize so the bilateral trade itself by again promoting our own goods to the U.S. market, primarily egg products, mostly dried fruits, precious metals, and of course handicrafts and textile. I mean carpets and fabrics that you are well familiar with. So that's the way how we should diversify our bilateral trade with the United States.
Thank you. Nelson, next question.
No, actually, since we are getting near the top of the hour, let me go ahead and take this opportunity to thank you once again, Ambassador, for being our featured guest at this webinar. We thank you so much for all the times that you've been very cooperative with not just WIPG, but with the Washington World Trade Center of Washington, D.C., in all endeavors of both cultural and economic and political outreach. Thank you so much for that. I would be remiss if I did not recognize your staff, Your Excellency, for their hard work and effort in continuing to reach out to all aspects of public and private sector life here in Washington, D.C., in particular, Akbar Burkhanov and Alisher Akhmedov. For those two individuals, thank you again for your hard work in working with us very closely. I would also be remiss if I don't recognize Ms. Elena Sun from the American Uzbekistan Chamber of Commerce for helping us publicize this event. So thank you so much, Elena, for all of your hard work. Our next, before I head finally off to Andrew one more time for closing remarks, I would like to highlight our next event, which will take place on October 27, our next webinar, this time with the ambassador from the Republic of Croatia. More information will be going out to everyone who are interested in participating in that particular webinar momentarily. And with that, on behalf of the Washington Intergovernmental Professional Group, from my end, thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you, Andrew and Allison and Husai from the World Trade Center. And I'll go ahead and hand it up to you, Andrew, for closing remarks.
On behalf of the World Trade Center, Washington, D.C., Your Excellency, I want to thank you for your time. I'd like to thank all of our viewers for tuning in, and I hope you join us for our next webinar. Wish everyone a pleasant afternoon. Thank you so much.